Hi, I'm Susan Kellner of the Ontario Pesticide Education Program. I'm going to stay with you for a few minutes here to review Chapter 1, How Pesticides Are Regulated. There are 20 slides in this presentation and it will take about 15 minutes to review. Okay, let's get started. What will I learn? By the end of this lesson, you should be ready to name types of pesticides, identify the main purpose of the Federal Pest Control Products Act, name other federal acts that have an impact on pesticides, name the provincial laws that impact the use of pesticides, describe how pesticides are classified in Ontario, and explain how certified farmers must supervise their assistance and what that is. Okay, what is a pesticide? A pesticide is a substance used to prevent, control, or destroy a pest, and the common ones we know: insecticides control insects, herbicides control weeds, fungicides control fungi that cause disease. Other familiar ones would be rodenticides, rat and mouse control, miticides, and nematicides. Federally, Canada has a law. It is the Pest Control Products Act, PCP Act. It regulates pesticides. Pesticides must be registered and given a registration number before they can be sold or used in Canada. The Pest Management Regulatory Agency, PMRA. Remember, PMRA, we'll continue to mention PMRA. Under Health Canada, they administer the PCP Act and regulations. Before a pesticide is registered, the PMRA scientists review lots of scientific studies about potential risks of the pesticide to human health and the environment. And by examining those studies, they make sure that the use of the product doesn't pose unacceptable risks to plants, animals, or human health. And you may visit the PMRA's website, and you can just go to your search engine and put in PMRA or Pest Management Regulatory Agency and take a look around their website and see what information they offer. Incident reporting. Health Canada, PMRA, encourages anyone to report a pesticide incident, and you can use the form on their website. An incident is an adverse effect on humans, animals, or the environment from an exposure to a pesticide. And you can review the reports. The reports are available on their website. And the idea is to stop similar incidents from happening. Read the label every year. It may have changed. So the pesticide label is approved by PMRA, but last year's label may be different from next year's label or this year's label. So there is reevaluation of pesticides. There could be emergency use registered and additional use for a pesticide. There can be updated information on pests and crops, rates, buffer zones, and even precautions. So make sure you have the most up-to-date label. The reevaluation of registered pesticides is on a schedule. All registered pesticides must be reevaluated by the PMRA on a schedule to make sure they continue to meet modern health and environmental safety standards and continue to have value. PMRA may decide to amend a pesticide label, or they may decide that product is canceled. You can no longer use it. Here's an example of a reevaluation with gramoxone liquid herbicide. So there was a reevaluation. There are new safety requirements for gramoxone. So the last date in sale of this product, this older product, was September 30th, 2017. Then they had a last day of registration of the product. And now there is a new gramoxone product meeting new requirements and with a new registration number. So there's an example of a recent reevaluation and a changing of a product. Emergency use registration, there are 3 conditions that must exist for a pest emergency. The outbreak causes significant economic, environmental, or health problems. No product is registered in Canada for control of that pest. And 2, no alternative method is available. That means an alternative method to a pesticide. So if those 3 conditions are met, there can be an emergency use registration. So here's an example. It will say on the label, for emergency use only. You read and follow the label, the supplemental label for that emergency use. So control of powdery mildew in greenhouse cucumbers until December of whatever. So there's an expiry date on the use of emergency use registration. Here's a list of other federal laws that have an impact on pesticides and how they're used. Might bring your attention to the second one there, the Agriculture and Agri-Food Administrative Monetary Penalties Act, and that lays out the fines and violations that could be applied if you're using a pesticide not according to the product label. You can see other ones listed there too. And also we'll mention the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, the CFIA. And the CFIA has a website you can go to. CFIA safeguards Canada's food supply by inspecting and monitoring plants and animals in Canada. So they're looking for pesticide residues on food. That would be a residue that would be above the maximum residue limit allowed. So read about that in your manual there. All right, we're going on to provincial regulations now. So that is the Ontario Pesticides Act and the regulation that goes along with that act. So the Ontario Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, and we short form that MECP, regulates pesticides products under the Pesticides Act and Regulation 63-09. And so Ontario would look after the use, the sale, the storage, display, disposal, and transportation of pesticides after they're registered in Canada. And to see that whole act, or to look at the regulation as well, those are available on e-laws. So again, you can do that on the internet. You can search for e-laws and look at the whole Pesticides Act and the whole wording in the regulation. The most important part of that is the classification of pesticides in Ontario. So the federal government classifies pesticides, but also the provincial government. And that is so they can put them into groups to specify rules for use. So the Pest Management Regulatory Agency, PMRA of Health Canada, puts a pesticide into one of 4 classifications. It might be restricted, it might be a commercial pesticide, and that is also named agricultural, industrial, or institutional. All 4 of those different names could be on the front label, on the front panel, right near the product name. Domestic and manufacturing. So the manufacturing products are not available to the public for sale. They would be available for manufacturing one of the others, a restricted commercial or domestic product. The provincial government classification matches to the federal classification. Okay, on the next slide you can see Canada's classification, manufacturing. Ontario calls that Class A. Restricted, Ontario calls that Class B. Commercial, Class C. Domestic, Class D. And Ontario has an additional Class E. And Class E is for the regulation of the sale and use of corn and soybean seed treated with imidacloprid, chlorothiazide, or thiamethoxam. These are active ingredients in the neonicotinoid family. So that is not a federal classification. Each class has different requirements for the pesticide's sale and use. As well, a pesticide in a certain class might require you to even get a permit in addition to what the direction is according to its class. So note, farmers must be certified to buy and use Class B and C pesticides. So you say, okay, what's a Class B and a Class C pesticide? If you go up, the federally restricted classification is Class B, and the federal commercial classification is Class C. So if you look at a product label and near the product name you see the word commercial or agricultural or institutional or industrial, that is a Class C product. If you look at the product label near the pesticide name and you see the word restricted, that is a Class B. So farmers must be certified, take the grower pesticide safety course and pass to be able to buy and use the restricted commercial products. Oh, I've already talked about where you can find the classification. It's on the label near the product name, and then by knowing that federal classification, you will know the Ontario classification. So on this product, the federal classification is agriculture, and we know then the Ontario classification. That would be Class C. Now let's talk about certified farmers. To be a certified farmer, you must be a farmer as defined under the Pesticides Act and Regulation, and also certified, meaning you've successfully completed the grower pesticide safety course. Here's the picture of the green credit card type certificate that we will issue. It'll have your name and address on there, plus a certificate number and the expiry year and month. So they are valid for 5 years. The retail pesticide vendor must record the certificate number and the expiry date for each sale of a Class B or C pesticide. And what is the definition of a farmer under the regulation? You are a farmer if you own or operate an agricultural operation. And that's defined to include those points there. And that is in your book in as well, and you can look that up. If you fit into any of those, then come out to take the course to be certified. Who's a farmer assistant? You may have helpers on the farm who mix, load, or apply Class B or Class C pesticides under supervision of a certified farmer. So if you're certified, you have an assistant, they need to be trained. Farmer assistants are trained in 2 ways. They must either participate in the grower pesticide safety course or participate in the pesticide safety for farmer assistance course, and that's given by a qualified on-farm pesticide safety instructor. And now supervision, it's defined in the regulation. Assistants must be supervised directly. That means you're standing with them, right beside them while they're doing mixing, loading, or applying. So that's direct supervision. Indirect supervision, you can be away from them, maybe from the site, but you must provide written instructions that are kept available at the application site for the mixing and loading or applying of the pesticides. Be available for immediate response through an effective communication system, and then be physically present within a reasonable time if there is an emergency. So while you're not actually beside them, you need to be following up with them pretty promptly and be readily available. Okay, there are some other Ontario laws. Quickly, the Environment Protection Act, the Water Resources Act, the Clean Water Act, the Weed Control Act, all have an impact on pesticides and pesticide use, so you can read those in your manual. And that's it for Chapter 1.